Moby-Dick together, and we're going to share our thoughts.
I would compare Moby-Dick to something like The Old Man and the Sea by Hemingway. They both deal with somebody out in sea and getting obsessed over a fish. Whereas the old man is striving to get his best purpose in life, and this last fish is like his great triumph. Ahab is more of an obsession and gets so obsessed to his own demise.
Yeah, it's like the whale symbolizes something different for the two books. Moby-Dick is not about a whale. Although the novel has extended passages about whaling and is steeped in nautical language and the setting, the core theme that's pursued through the whale is obsession, revenge, and what I've come to call the. So I read this poem maybe in high school. It's Wallace Stevens' poem, The Man on the Dump, and it uses the words the to convey an infinite grasping at the truth. There's something out there, always just out of arm's reach, unnameable and ungraspable, the something that we feel we need. And in the poem it's called the. It's everywhere in literature. It's the university at Christminster in Jude the Obscure. It's the green light in The Great Gatsby, and it's the whale in Moby-Dick. But the catch is that the that these characters yearn for doesn't actually exist. How anticlimactic it would have been for Ahab to actually catch the whale. I pictured him standing over Moby's body, still with one leg, still with his history of trauma and mental health challenges, realizing that the capture of this whale didn't actually restore anything that he had lost. And I think we're all a little bit like Ahab, pursuing our own whales, chasing a benchmark that forever recedes from our grasp.
Ahab creates the monster metaphorically inside of himself. It's sort of him that he's fighting against more than the actual whale. I think that's really the biggest message in this book, is that everyone has their white whale inside of themselves that they are fighting against. God help thee, old man, thy thoughts have created a creature in thee, and he whose intense thinking thus makes him a Prometheus. A vulture feeds upon his heart forever, that vulture the very creature he creates.
So he's created this vulture that's now feeding on him. And in this sense, he's exchanged the whale for a vulture. So clearly, it's more like the symbolism is a placeholder. But then only a few pages later, he says this funny thing that gave me pause. So ignorant are most landsmen of some of the plainest and most palpable wonders of the world, that without some hints touching the plain facts, historical and otherwise, of the fishery, they might scout at Moby-Dick as a monstrous fable, or, still worse and more detestable, a hideous and intolerable allegory.
So it's like even making fun of that aspect that we're talking about right now. It's
so tongue-in-cheek, where he's saying, don't mistake this for an allegory, when clearly he is writing an allegorical tale.
Yeah.
And there's one part on the uses of oil. Certain I am, however, that a king's head is solemnly oiled at his coronation, even as a head of salad. Can it be, though, that they anoint it with a view of making its interior run well, as they anoint machinery? And I thought that was a very funny way to say, are they oiling his head hoping it works better, like you would oil an engine? He'll take the smallest, most insignificant, everyday things and make humor out of them.
Like this one, just talking about the right whale's head, says, does not this whole whale head seem to speak of an enormous practical resolution in facing death? This right whale I take to have been a Stoic, the sperm whale, a Platonian, who might have taken up a Spinoza in his later years.
I didn't know that the book would be so philosophical. There's this one quote on 299. Why say more? All men live enveloped in whale lines. All are born with halters round their necks. But it is only when caught in the swift sudden turn of death that mortals realize the silent, subtle, ever-present perils of life. And if you be a philosopher, though seated in the whaleboat, you would not at heart feel one whit more of terror than though seated before your evening fire with a poker, and not a harpoon by your side. So he's saying, why would the sailors have such fear when all of your life is unknown and you could come under peril at any point in your life?
Mm-hmm. Look not too long in the face of the fire, O man. Never dream with thy hand on the helm. Turn not thy back to the compass. Accept the first hint of the hitching tiller. Believe not the artificial fire when its redness makes all things look ghastly. Tomorrow, in the natural sun, the skies will be bright. Those who glared like devils in the forking flames, the morn will show in far other, a least gentler relief. The glorious golden, glad sun, the only true lamp, all others but liars. Yeah, I just thought that was a really cool quote talking about like looking into the future and not holding on to these obsessions that we're faced with in our lives.
For all men tragically great are made so through a certain morbidness. Be sure of this, O young ambition, all mortal greatness is but disease. And I think that ties to one of the main messages I got from the book, is that when you're pursuing these white whales with obsession, it can be your downfall, it can be your disease.
Yeah.
One disclaimer I wanted to put in the book review was how outdated some of the thoughts and references are in this book. But since this was a group read and I was reading it with you, I stuck it out and I'm so glad I did. And I found it interesting that there was this strange dichotomy. At the same time, there are many themes and passages of this book that are very forward-thinking and stand the test of time, and are still lessons that we need to learn today. I see this almost contemporary attitude towards accepting the religions and cultures and people groups that have been othered. And I see this mostly in the beautiful friendship that blossoms between Ishmael and Queequeg. Early on, when Queequeg invites Ishmael to pray to Queequeg's idol with him, in this gesture of friendship and welcoming, that scene transcends the boundaries that sometimes surround culture and religion in such a beautiful way. And it almost gave me whiplash the way that this book treats people from different cultures and different religions in such beautiful and accepting ways on some pages, and then in such insensitive, terrible ways on other pages. And that was a lot to grapple with.
I guess I always kind of view classics in that lens of like, they didn't know any better. Which they should have, right? It's not like it's really excusable, you know, because if something like this came out today, it would be awful.
Yeah.
And it still is awful, the things that come up, the themes that come up into it.
How did you like the ending of the book?
Yeah, I feel like it surprised me the way that he killed pretty much everybody except for Ishmael. Spoiler alert. It's also like the perfect ending just because it like really shows the impact of Ahab and his decisions.
Exactly. The book talks about fate a lot, and this is the fate of all of them. For the book to not end in total destruction wouldn't have been a complete pursuit of the theme of this fatal obsession with revenge. I'm just happy Moby didn't die. If they actually got Moby, I would have been so sad. I was rooting for him.
Yeah.
So what are your future plans with Herman Melville?
I think I want to try his earlier novels like Redburn and White Jacket. I want to see how they compare to Moby-Dick because it was such like an introspective, metaphorical novel that, yeah, I just want to see how it differs